Good morning, everyone.
Just a second. I am now.
Hey, Matt, how we doing?
I'm well. How are you? Good to see
Doing
you.
great.
Eric, I'm going to turn my camera on so you can see that I actually do have clothes. So who moves the bed?
Next, I'll get the next one though. I see Ray Douglas on the call. Ray, I was just out in Yuma yesterday, and Trent Bushner's his new sarcastic IPA is super malty. I think you would have loved it. So you got to talk to him about bringing some to conference at the end of November there.
Well, that sounds like a fine idea.
It was really good. It was way better than the game. I was drinking it during the game. I should have just stuck to drinking beer and not watching the game last night.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you know, hindsight's 2020, right? So
true. Yeah. Not like the stuff you gave me was anything to sneeze at.
no, yeah, that's a good little, you know, it's right next to the CSU campus, that brewery. So whenever we're up there visiting my son, we always make a point of stopping in there. They do it pretty well.
I'll have to go see my daughter. I'll be right back.
We still got people joining, so I'm gonna hold on just a second or another minute or so, and then we'll I've got about 11 o'clock here, but people are still jumping on, so let's give them a minute. Okay, well, I've got 11:01. Let's go ahead and kick it off. And we're gonna have some more joining, it looks like, in the next minute or two, but I do want to be mindful of everybody's time today. My name is Eric Bergman. I'm the policy director here at Colorado Counties Incorporated. I want to thank the Colorado County Clerks Association for reaching out to us. We've had some really good conversations in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we are in the election season right now. Ballots are out, and they had offered up to either possibly do a session at conference, but we decided why not do something before, and so we decided to do this webinar today. We are going to have we have got Carly Cops. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Carly. Bo Ortiz from Pueblo, and also Matt Crane, the executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. The three of them are going to provide some updates on the election security, election systems, kind of myths versus reality. Also, they're going to give us a little bit of an update on potential legislation for next year. We will have plenty of time for Q&A, and I'll let them decide how they want to handle that. We can either do questions in the chat, or if you want to just chime in, but let's go. I'm going to give them our attention first and let them go ahead and kind of run through kind of the update, and then I'm sure they'll generate some good Q&A amongst the group. So with that, I will hand it over to our esteemed colleagues, the county clerks. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Eric. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Matt Crane. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. Before this, I was the clerk and recorder in Arapahoe County from 2013 to 2019, and I have worked in elections administration here in Colorado for 20 years. So, Carly, Bo, do you guys want to do brief intros?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I am Carly Koppas, and I'm the Weld County Clerk and Recorder. And just like Matt, I've actually been in elections for 17 years. I started at the very bottom entry-level position in the Weld County Clerk and Recorder's election department and worked my way up. And now I'm serving as the elected clerk and recorder and currently the president of the Clerks Association.
My name is Gilbert Ortiz, better known as Bo Ortiz. I'm the Pueblo County Clerk and Recorder. In 2012, I was the president of the association, and I am the president-elect of the association right now. And I've been in office for 15 and a half years.
All right, Eric, is it okay if I grab the screen, sir? Okay. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Okay. So we really appreciate the opportunity to come and meet with you guys today and talk to you a little bit. We know that since the 2020 general election last year, elections has really become front and center, not just here in Colorado, but across the country. And the impacts of the presidential election and the mis and disinformation that have followed from that continue to be a significant issue for clerk and recorders and election administrators across the state. We also understand that your email boxes are getting full emails from constituents who are asking you about different parts of the election process. So we really thought it would be a good idea if we took the time to meet with you all today to talk through, a brief overview of Colorado's election model, and then get into some of the specifics about some of the MDM that's out there, and then allow you all to ask any questions that you may have around this subject. So as we go, if you have any questions, just let me know, whether through the chat or if you want to jump in, we're fine either way. But we figure the PowerPoint will take maybe half the time, so we should have plenty of time for questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. So a very high level overview, and I think most of you all know this, of Colorado's election model. Colorado is a mail ballot delivery state. We hear a lot of talk about all mail ballot. Colorado is actually a hybrid election model. We are not all mail ballot. We have other options, other access to the ballot besides receiving a mail ballot. So in Colorado, all active voters receive a ballot in the mail. In the 2020 general election, 94% of those who cast a ballot cast their mail ballot. However, 70+% of those who cast their mail ballot did so at a drop box. So a significant number of our fellow Coloradans like to use the ballot drop boxes that we have all around the state. This next point is a very important distinction. Inactive voters. Colorado has two classifications of registered voters. There's active voters, and then there's inactive voters. You become an inactive voter in Colorado if we receive returned mail, an undeliverable ballot or another piece of undeliverable mail, that will move you to the inactive status. And if you are inactive, you do not receive a ballot. So when you hear some concerns about, oh, this county has, look at their voter registration numbers, they don't seem to jive. We hear this from Judicial Watch sometimes. Judicial Watch never delineates the difference between active and inactive voters. And it's really the active voters that we need to be concerned about. Inactive voters can become active, but to do that, they need to have some kind of interaction with the clerk's office, whether it's calling and requesting a new ballot or going online to update the registration, something like that. But it's a very important distinction to know that inactive voters are not automatically mailed a ballot. Colorado, as you know, in-person voting is available. In the 2020 general election, about 6% of those who cast a ballot did so by mail. So as you can see, it's not a large part of our voting population that goes to vote in person. The vast majority of people cast their mail ballot. Every voter in Colorado casts a paper ballot. Some of the emails that have been going around are demanding that Colorado goes to a paper ballot system. Colorado already has a paper ballot system, whether it's the mail ballot the ballot you receive in the mail, or if you go and vote in a VSPC, you can either get a flat paper ballot or you can go and vote on a ballot marking device. But even that ballot marking device prints off a paper ballot that the voter puts in the ballot box, and that's the official record for the election. So in Colorado, every voter casts a paper ballot. Our election systems, and this isn't just voting systems, it's our mail ballot sorting machines, our automatic signature verification. All of these systems are tested and audited extensively before, during, and after each election. Colorado's model also, we have online voter registration. At govotecolorado.gov, where voters can go online. It's really helped the accessibility of our of our elections process to be able to have this option. We have automatic voter registration here in Colorado. I think there's a lot of confusion about what this is. Automatic voter registration really brings Colorado more in line with the National Voter Registration Act of 1994. It started off as being able to integrate registering to vote through at the same time you get your driver's license. So really when we talk about
Sorry, I just had another call start, so I'm trying.
When we talk about automatic voter registration, that's what we're talking about. Now in Colorado, over the last couple of years, that's expanded to other government agencies as well. But automatic voter registration is important because it allows for county clerks for the state and county clerks to have the most up-to-date information about voters. We don't have to go chasing it. So that helps cut down on the number of undeliverable ballots that get mailed out each election. It also helps make sure that ballots aren't going to old addresses when it should come to new addresses. And then, of course, we have same-day voter registration in Colorado as well. And Carly, Bo, if you guys see a question pop up in the chat, can you let me know and we can address it that way too? Okay. So what is MDM? We've heard this expression used a lot over the last 10 months, 11 months. So MDM stands for misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So what does all that mean? Misinformation is information that is false, but it's not created or shared with the intent of causing harm. Usually the person who spreads it doesn't know that it's not true. They just read something, say on Facebook, and they're like, oh, wow, I have to share this. And they don't take the time to research about whether or not it's true. So it's not spread with the intent of causing harm. Disinformation is deliberately created to mislead, harm, or manipulate a person, social group, organization, or country. So there is no truth to disinformation. And again, it's created expressly to cause harm or to cause chaos. And then malinformation is kind of the tricky one here. It's based on facts, but it's used out of context to mislead, cause harm, or manipulate. And we see a lot of this. We see a lot of malinformation around elections since the 2020 general election. There are people who are very good at taking a snippet of truth and then spinning a complete conspiracy theory or lie around that little bit of truth. So, as CISA, the Department of Homeland Security says, foreign and domestic threat actors use MDM campaigns to cause chaos, confusion, and division. These malign actors are seeking to interfere with and undermine our democratic institutions and national cohesiveness. And really, we see MDM across different sectors, especially different sectors that have been tabbed as critical infrastructure, whether it's healthcare, whether it's energy. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in MDM across all sectors. And unfortunately, elections is not immune to that either. So as we start to get into MDM, it's important to talk a little bit. Obviously, here in Colorado and across the country, there's a lot of MDM going around about voting systems and Colorado voting systems as well, both Dominion and Clear Ballot. So we wanted to provide a little perspective for how Colorado got here with Clear Ballot and Dominion being certified for use here. So in 2015, then Secretary Wayne Williams convened the PERC committee, which is the Pilot Election Review Committee. This committee consisted of clerk and recorders, political party representatives, election activists, and business community leaders. So it was really a well put together committee that brought together a lot of different diverse opinions and viewpoints and backgrounds to be able to help make the decision about what systems to certify. So it really, think of it this way, it was really an open competition where there were 4 election vendors that worked with 8 different counties in Colorado. So 2 counties worked with each vendor. Each vendor worked with 2 counties in the 2015 coordinated election. There was a series of tests and performance matrix that the PERC committee had to go and visit these counties, visit each county and fill out these different matrix to be able to grade and score each voting system. As a part of that process, Dominion Voting Systems was the clear winner. I can't remember the exact vote. Carly, Bo, you guys might remember, but I think it was 5-2 Dominion, and then Clear Ballot, I think, got 2 votes, if I recall correctly. Dominion, after that process, Dominion was first certified for use in Colorado, and then Clear Ballot was later certified as well. As it stands now, we have 62 counties in Colorado that use Dominion. 2 counties use Clear Ballot, that's Douglas and Garfield. We have 1 county, San Juan, that hand counts. They have 716 total voters, but they still use Dominion's ballot marking device. So that's how we got here with the voting systems. It was a decision, recommendation by a committee that Secretary Williams, then Secretary Williams, followed the recommendation of that committee. Okay, so the voting system process, just a bit of background about how voting systems get certified for use across the country and here in Colorado. So through the Federal Election Assistance Commission, there is a federal certification program that voting systems go through. The state of Colorado also has its own certification program. Once the state of Colorado certifies a voting system for use, it works to create a document called conditions for use. So it's important to note, as with any computer system, there are vulnerabilities in every single computer system, regardless of the sector that the system works in. What the conditions of use sets up are mitigations for counties to be able to close off those vulnerabilities to the best extent we can, so that those systems can be used in an election. It is very important to note, and this is one good thing that the people spreading the MDM are very good at, are scaring people that these vulnerabilities mean exploits. There are no known exploits of a voting system in the 2020 general election. Okay, I want to be very clear on that. Anywhere in the country, there are no known exploits of any vulnerabilities in a voting system in the 2020 general election. So conditions for use, there's a separate set of conditions for Dominion and a separate set of conditions for Clear Ballot, both based on the system architecture and the way those systems, the way those components work. Then each county does a logic and accuracy test before the election. This logic and accuracy test is open to the public, where we have testing boards that come in, citizen testing boards. You know, in many cases, we know, clerks or political party representatives political parties appoint the testing board. They come in, they mark ballots, they mark each different position, they test for overvotes and undervotes. They will do a hand recount of the ballots that they test, and then their test deck is then sent through the tabulation system. And if it matches, it passes the test. If it doesn't match, they have to go back and find where the error was. Every single time that there has been a discrepancy between the hand count and the system count, the issue has been the hand count. The hand count was mistaken. And then post-election, of course, we have the risk limiting audit, which Colorado was the first state to implement a full statewide risk limiting audit in 2017. It was a process, the law passed calling for risk limiting audits in 2009. So it took us 8 years here in Colorado to go through different test cases before we were able to roll it out statewide. A lot of thought and consideration went into that. And there were a lot of stakeholders, whether it was academics, statisticians, other election stakeholders who came in to help form the risk limiting audit that we use here in Colorado. And that audit is now considered the best practice for post-election tabulation audits in the country. Other states are trying to emulate what we do here with the post-election audit. Finally, this last point, which is very important. Since 2016, Colorado voting systems have been tested and audited approximately 1,000 times across the 64 counties in the state and passed every single test and every single audit, including in 2020. So we're all hearing, you guys we've known about the trusted build for a long time. I know that's something that's become more prevalent now in your email boxes as you have people emailing with concerns about the trusted build. So what is the trusted build? Let's talk about that for a minute. Trusted builds are software and firmware updates for voting systems certified for use in Colorado. The trusted build, whenever there is a new version of the software and firmware from Clear Ballot or Dominion that is to be implemented in Colorado, that trusted build or that build has to go through testing through a federally accredited voting system test lab. The one that Colorado uses is ProVNV. We'll talk a little bit more about them in just a minute. If the software and firmware updates pass testing according to the 2002 voting system standards, the state of Colorado will then certify that build for use in Colorado. Now, when are trusted builds required? They occur as legislation, system, and/or security requirements dictate. So if there's a legislative update, as we just had in the last session that calls for ranked choice voting, there's probably going to be a new trusted build that comes through that validates that the system can do that kind of election. So those types of things. Another very important part of the chain of the trusted build, chain of custody at that point is established for that image to ensure that the software and firmware has not been tampered with. So one of the interesting, and once the trusted build is installed, nothing else happens to those servers or to those ballot marking devices or to the tabulation scanners. So we see in some emails going around, oh, the system hasn't been upgraded to the latest Windows patches, so on and so forth. That's by design. These systems are not connected to the internet. And once the trusted build is installed, putting on other updates that may come out is not possible. Otherwise, we'd have to go through the complete trusted build, reinstall the trusted build again after that. We hear a lot about Wi-Fi capability on these voting systems. Yes, it is true. Both Clear Ballot and Dominion have components of their voting system that have Wi-Fi capability. However, as a part of the trusted build process, that Wi-Fi capability is disabled. And one of the things we've asked for and the Secretary's office has provided going forward, now during the public test, counties can now demonstrate how that Wi-Fi capability has been disabled. So that hopefully that gives a level of comfort to citizens that these systems are not connected to the internet. There's no chance of China coming in to hack them, and they can trust the security around the systems. So who is ProVNV? There's been emails and open records requests going on around our testing system lab. Who are they? ProVNV is a federally accredited voting system testing lab, and we call that VISTL for short. They're based out of Alabama. So a quick thing that's been going around. Did ProVNV ever lose their federal accreditation, and thus should anything that they have certified for Colorado since 2018 or 19, should all of that be thrown out? The answer to that is no. This is disinformation. The people spreading this are purposely trying to cause confusion and distrust in the system. ProVNV received their federal accreditation as a VISTL in 2015 from the EAC, and their accreditation has never been revoked. A VISTL can only use their accreditation by a vote of the election assistance commissioners, That has never happened. The Election Assistance Commission has never voted to revoke the accreditation of Pro VNV. Anything else is not true. It is disinformation. Okay, another thing we hear about the trusted build. Does it delete system records? And the answer is yes, it does, by design. The trusted build process installs new software and firmware on the voting system and its components and removes the old software and firmware related to the old build. So when we hear people going on social media and they're like, oh, we found it, the trusted build deleted 29,000 files. Yes, by design. This is true on both Dominion and Clear Ballot voting systems. Finally, a very important point. This is not a violation of federal or state election retention laws. So when you get these emails and people are trying to scare you to say that, oh, you're violating laws by this trusted build process, absolutely not true. So let's talk about what are election records and what's required for retention. Federal law here, you can see that 52 USC 20701. This is from the 1960 Civil Rights Act. The text from that act: every officer of election shall retain and preserve for a period of 22 months all records and papers which come into his possession relating to any application, registration, payment of poll tax, or other requisite to voting in such election. This federal law refers to any documentation related to voter registration. It's never been understood to be applicable to anything else beyond voter registration. Now, Colorado has a more in-depth definition of what's an election record. So election records in Colorado, which is in Title I, Article 1, Section 104 in the definitions part right at the beginning, Parent 11. Election records include accounting forms, certificates of registration, poll books, certificates of election, signature cards, affidavits, voter applications, and other lists or records, mail ballot return envelopes, voted ballots, unused ballots, spoil ballots, and replacement ballots. And pursuant to Colorado law, you can see that in 17802, election records must be retained for 25 months. So you hear things about Windows access logs. Nowhere in federal law or state law are those required, are those considered election records for the purposes of being retained for for either 22 months or 25 months. Now, what the voting system standards do require is that any system that is certified for use under those standards, under the 2002 standards, be able to preserve data and log data and things that change in the system, abnormalities, that kind of thing. Both Dominion and Clear Ballot do preserve data as required by the 2002 voting system standards. The information is backed up during and after each election. System testing done by Pro VNV validates that the systems do this before they are certified for use in Colorado. So when the next time you get an email that says they're deleting election records, it's 100% not true. Are there files being deleted based on the old system? Yes. Are any election records being deleted? No. I see a question in the chat here. Can we get access to this PowerPoint? Commissioner Davis, absolutely, sir. We will make this available for you. Okay, so another very important point from the 2002 voting system standards. The records that are kept need to be able to reconstruct the election in case that were necessary. Is this possible based on what we do here in Colorado? The answer is 100% yes. The Colorado Department of State maintains each trusted build that is installed on both Dominion and Clear Ballot. So they still have the trusted build that was used for the 2020 general election. Counties create multiple backups of their voting system election projects throughout the election. So the trusted build and those election projects can be reinstalled and ballots can be recounted at any point in time. Okay, so again, I want to stress, when you get that email that says Colorado is in violation of state law, and if you guys approve, if the county commissioners approve voting, the purchase of voting systems in their counties, you could end up in jail because you're violating federal law. It's not true. It's disinformation. These people are, quite frankly, are spreading lies. in hopes of destabilizing the system. Okay, so just so you know, we had a couple of counties that went over and above after 2020 to be able to demonstrate that the voting systems worked properly. Elbert County, Clerk Dallas Schroeder, he does a great job down there in Elbert County. In May of this year, he brought election judges back in and did a full hand recount of the 2020 presidential election. There was a 3-vote difference. The differences were questions of voter intent. So if it went to adjudication, which happens when the system cannot determine voter intent, it was the 3 ballots were just the way that the judges who looked at that ballot at the time compared, they had a difference from how it was adjudicated during the election. But a 3-vote difference, you can trust that the machine counted votes properly. When you hear about this, I guarantee you the people spreading disinformation know about this hand recount. How come they never include that in their correspondence to you? There's a reason for that, because it completely undermines the argument they're trying to make. Elbert County, Clerk Chuck Broerman, again, does a fantastic job. He's a rock star of a clerk. Conducted a full recount of the 2020 presidential contest in February by running the ballot images through a different tabulation system. So he took, El Paso runs Dominion. He took his ballot images and ran them through Clear Ballot. There was a 0.006% difference. Again, the differences were questions of voter intent. The voting system, as I mentioned before, has passed over 1,000 tests and audits across the state since 2016, including every state passing the RLA in 2020. Elbert and El Paso County have gone above and beyond. And as we've seen testing of voting systems, and we know specifically Dominion's been under attack from MDM, every single test, including the recent one in Arizona, showed that the system counted votes properly. Okay, so let's talk very quickly, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Specific MDM related to Colorado. So we've broken this down into a couple of different ways: voter registration, and then voting systems and ballot processing. So some of the MDM that's been out there, back in April when Douglas Frank did a big presentation out here, there was a claim made that SCORE has never been tested. That's absolute disinformation. It's a lie. It's not true. SCORE has been through numerous security tests, vulnerability scanning, cyber hygiene scanning. The state has hired third parties to come in and try to hack into the system. There's a reason why in 2018, the Washington Post said Colorado was the safest place to cast a ballot. Much of that was around the way that the state has gone about testing and mitigating any vulnerabilities in SCORE. And that was true under Secretary Williams, and that's true under Secretary Griswold. Another thing put out there, there's no 24/7 monitoring of SCORE to see if there are any security breaches. That's complete disinformation. The state has staff that monitors SCORE 24/7. They also have a third-party vendor that monitors SCORE 24/7. Some more disinformation. If it sounds ridiculous, it's because it is, but unfortunately, these people are still going around making these claims. Every voter registration database in the country was hacked to put in some kind of algorithm that made it possible for results to come out a certain way. The same people say that they've been able to predict the voting by age demographic across the board, and they shouldn't be able to do that. Little bit of a newsflash: election officials do that every single election. Every voter registration database in the county and the country was not hacked. There's no evidence that anyone was hacked in 2020. ERIC. So what's ERIC? ERIC's the Election Registration and Information Center. This is a public-private partnership with states where there's 30 states that participate in ERIC now. They take their voter registration database and their DMV database, and they dump it into a huge database so that states can be able to look and see, Commissioner Davis, based off your question, they could see, okay, you have a driver's license here in Colorado? Do you have one in Utah? It allows states that participate in that to be able to identify that and then figure out which state that voter should be in and get that straightened out. So it leads to a cleaner voter registration list. There's actually people out there who say it makes voter registration list maintenance worse. Let me give you a quick stat on that. In 2010, but before we joined Eric and did some of the other things we do now with national change of address, those types of things, our undeliverable ballot rate for the 2010 general election was about 10% statewide. The state has told me, the SOS has told me, the undeliverable ballot rate for the 2020 general election was about 2%. So an 8% increase over 10 years is substantial in terms of the accuracy of our voter registration list. Another one, thousands of dead people voted in Colorado in the 2020 general election. This is disinformation as well. Data matching is hard. A lot of people think that they can get the voter registration list and then get some other publicly available list and say, okay, now we're going to be able to look to see how accurate the voter registration list is. It's really hard. They don't have that public database, doesn't have all of the same data points that SCORE has, that counties have access to. And I give you this to think about. Earlier this year, the group, one of the representatives who has been involved up in Mesa County and talking about 24,000 people voted who shouldn't have, something like that. That group submitted a list of 759 names to the El Paso County DA of people who they thought had been dead and cast a ballot. Clerk Broerman and his team went through that list. They got exactly one name right. So they were wrong 758 times. But the one they had right, Chuck and his team had already identified back in February and sent already to the DA. So we're certainly not against people looking and verifying and validating the election, but when they run out making claims based on incomplete or bad data, that only exacerbates the fear and concern that people have elections, and it doesn't speak truth to what's really happening. And so we have to be very careful with that. Another claim, automatic voter registration makes list maintenance worse. That's complete disinformation. We talked about that earlier. Automatic voter registration allows counties to be able to have the most accurate information possible for voters to be able to update their address. MDM related to ballot processing and voting systems. It's been claimed counties restrict the number of signatures that an election judge can reject. That's absolutely not true. There are no boundaries for how many signatures a signature verification judge can reject. We want them to call balls and strikes as they see them, and we do not lead them to either make more accepts or rejects than what really should be. Voting systems aren't properly certified. We talked a little bit about that before. Complete disinformation. We've talked about that before. The Visto Pro V&V wasn't accredited. Again, complete disinformation. The trusted build process deletes election records. Again, it's malinformation. It deletes records by design, but it doesn't delete election records that are required for retention under federal and state law. No one checks to see if voting systems are connected to the internet. Again, as we talked about before, that happens during the trusted build. That's disinformation. We've all heard the ones about bamboo ballots, where there were secret ballots flown in from Asia that had been pre-marked or had some kind of thing to trick the voting systems. That's complete disinformation. There's some new disinfo that's come out that Mesa County account for 5,000 adjudicated ballots. That is complete disinformation. Mesa County has all of their ballots from 2020. They have all of their adjudication records from 2020. And it may happen in an election where the adjudication process, you need to back a batch out of adjudication and re-adjudicate it because if the system got hung up and they just had to go through and restart it, something like that. But Mesa County has backups, of course, of all of the what happened in their election. And so any batch that got backed out of adjudication, they can pull up the backup to show where that happened. So, there was just a recent report that came out that their elections should be certified based on this 5,000 number. It's complete disinformation. One of my favorites, election night reporting website that we use here in Colorado, sends election results to servers in Europe to be scrubbed, to flip votes and then come back here. That's complete disinformation first. The vendor that we use here in Colorado is called SOE. They are a subsidiary of CITO, but their servers and their offices are here in the United States. And it's important to know that when counties upload results into that website, they verify the result before they publish it, so it's public facing. They verify that against the official results at the time of the posting. So a county's gonna know if bad information got posted. So again, it's complete disinformation. Also, there's a lot of disinfo that the Colorado County Clerks Association believes no changes are necessary to improve our elections, and that's ridiculous, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So now we'll kind of shift a little bit. One thing that we're doing, the amount of MDM, as you all know, is out there. It's coming fast and furious. So one of the things that we've started doing to inform our members about mis and disinformation, to make sure that they have the talking points they need to be able to address the MDM when it comes to them, and then to talk about security resources that are available to them. We started sending out a weekly election security update on email that talks about a lot of these things. We are more than willing to share that with you all if you're so inclined. Eric, if you want to, if you guys want to send your email address to Eric, and then Eric, you send those to me, we're happy to put you on the distribution list for that. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. So that last point where we talk about the CCCA and, the people out there that say, oh, we just say we're the gold standard, we're the best, and we don't need to do anything to improve. That's completely ridiculous. Again, disinformation. The association sent out a letter in June talking about some of the initiatives that we wanted to take on that really focus on election integrity. So there's 4 main points to it. One, we want to make ballot images and cast vote records. And if you're not familiar with the cast vote record, the cast vote record is the report that shows how the voting system, whether Dominion or Clear Ballot, how they interpreted each ballot that it counted. So we have that for each ballot that goes through the system. We want to make those images and those cast vote records available for public inspection at no cost after each election. Couple of things that we have to consider with that. We have to do a lot of redaction on those ballot images and cast vote records because we have to protect the voters' right to ballot anonymity, which, as you know, is in the Constitution. So there's a cost to that. We think that there are some digital solutions to that, but that's one thing we're working on and chasing. As a matter of fact, Bo Ortiz in Pueblo and Chuck Broerman in El Paso, and I think Mesa County is going to bring the tool online here soon. There's a new tool out there that allows this to happen. It's the redaction piece is still in process, a work in process, but it's called the BAR tool. They can put it on their website. It's a really great tool that posts all the images there. And if you want to go and see, say next time you're up for election as commissioners, if you want to go and pull up all of the images from precinct 101 in your county that voted for you, you can filter it out that way just to be presented with those images. So there's a lot that we can do in that space. A couple other things. We want to do a signature verification audit process enhancements. So right now, Colorado rule is pretty loosey-goosey in terms of signature verification audits. It says clerks shall periodically audit. We want something that is more robust and can provide more confidence, much like the risk limiting audits do, so that voters can know that signature verification process is happening properly and according to statute. We also look at this as a way to improve our training for signature verification and our coaching of signature verification judges in terms of if we're tracking data better, we can look at people who are outside norms. And if their work needs, if we need to coach them to work better and to get back in line with what the guidelines are, it will allow us to do that. We want to do voter list maintenance reviews and audits. Now, I want to be clear, the Secretary's office already does some, but we want to beef that up, especially as automatic voter registration expands to additional state databases. We want to make sure that the information coming into SCORE is the most accurate and up-to-date as possible. We don't want to import stale data that overwrites current data. So we just want to work to make sure that all of the different data points that are coming in are accurate. And then, of course, this last bullet point is now, it's, last but certainly not least, we want to ensure the proper funding of elections. The last time we had legislation impacting the state reimbursement rates was 2012. Right now, I think it's fair to say counties think that we're getting reimbursed about half of what the states what the state should be reimbursing counties for running elections. As county commissioners, you guys know what an incredible strain that is on your budgets. So we really want to push for increased funding. Elections have gotten more sophisticated, more expensive, and quite frankly, the security requirements, both in terms of cyber and physical, are getting more expensive as well. So we need to do more. We need to do better to make sure that we are keeping our elections as safe and secure as possible. So a lot of our legislative agenda coming up for, that should say 2022, I apologize, is around our initiatives letter and then funding. There's the operational piece and the security piece. And one anecdote I can tell you around security, the Department of Homeland Security does physical security assessments. They offer that for counties. We just had one county come back after doing that assessment. It was a great experience for them. Working with Homeland Security was fantastic. They got a great report about what they can do to harden their security posture. And the clerk came to me and said, Matt, we can't pay for any of this. So whether or not we chase federal funding for that, I know that CISA is working on providing federal funding to beef up physical and cybersecurity, or if we have to tackle some of this here at the state level, we need to, and quite frankly, my friends, we have to do better in terms of how we fund our elections moving forward, both from an operational and security standpoint. So I think I've just thrown a lot at you here. So now we'd love to open it up to the floor for questions, comments, concerns, anything you're hearing that we can address. We'd just love to open it up and hear from you.
Great. Matt, that was fantastic. We're going to pop out of the slideshow here and we'll get back to, I can see all the peoples. If you have questions, we'd ask that you can go ahead and just sing out, but if you want to raise your hand electronically or put a question in the chat, I'll start off. I had a question. I noticed on your slides that we have two counties, Garfield and Douglas, that are still using Clear Ballot, I think you said. Now, my understanding is that when they have to replace the machines, when the machines are at the end of their life, they will have to move to Dominion. Is that not correct? I thought that was part of the legislation a few years ago when we moved to Dominion, was basically you didn't have to change right away, but when your machines were at the end of their useful life. Is that an accurate statement?
Carly, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So they actually are allowed to continue on with Clear Ballot. So when that was actually passed, it was, the hope was everybody would be on that, but after the conclusion of the PERC, which we talked about, Matt talked about a little bit earlier, the conclusion of that committee, they actually were allowed to go ahead and have the option to purchase Clear Ballot. So every county was either, every county had to decide if you wanted to go with the Dominion or Clear Ballot. Obviously 62 decided to Dominion and those two decided with Clear Ballot.
Thank you, Carly. I didn't know that. Appreciate it. Okay, other questions out there, comments? This is your chance. We got the brain trust here. As you saw, also, there we go. Ray Douglas, Park County. Please go ahead.
Right now, 2 of the 3 commissioners have a recall ballot out against us. Myself is one of those. And this group continues to come in and pound on us about Dominion, and regardless of how we vote in Park County. And I don't know, this is going to sound really pathetic, but I'm sure if they were here watching this whole thing, how do we know sitting here that this is not MDM on your part, this whole presentation? Because that's the road that they would go down. I believe you guys. I think the group is very misinformed, and like you're saying, they latch onto those MDMs and they just fly with them. But they would say this whole thing that you just put on is MDM. It's not really a question; it's more of a comment, I guess, of course. Sure. But what could you possibly throw out there to make them or have them understand that this is not a bunch of illicit activity going on in the state of Colorado?
So we have, Carly and I and others have met with many of the people, spreading the MDM. I can tell you that all of this information is publicly available. There's nothing that I have presented today that you can't fact check somewhere else. The best thing, and the hard part is everybody's busy, and at some point, if you're destined to believe the election was stolen, you're going to be more inclined to listen to that. If you're more open-minded and from where we're at, if you want the truth, then you're going to listen to more of it. But, as we've talked about here, everything I said that was MDM when I had those slides that were bullet points, all of that, what I said is accurate, and you can prove that. You can fact check that in numerous different ways. And so when that's the case, and it's hard, right? Because who has time to go and fact check every single thing? But when you go and look at that, you'll start to see who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. Some of the people spreading MDM have a financial incentive to do that. Some people are true believers and they think the election is stolen, and there's nothing that you can do. You can point to the sky and say it's blue, but they are so hell-bent on believing it's purple, there's nothing you can do. But one of the approaches that we've tried to take as an association is we know that we're never going to get those true believers to understand what's true and what really happened. But there's a bigger opportunity group out there that's willing to listen. And those are the people that we are trying to impact and say, and quite frankly, one of the things that's most disturbing about this is, you can look at the Georgia Senate runoff elections back in January. Voter participation was down among the Republican Party, in large part because you had bad actors running around saying, if you don't vote, it'll prove the algorithm that blew up the election for President Trump. And that impacted the outcomes of those contests, at least in part. And so it's having a negative reaction on voter turnout, which as clerks, we aren't responsible for voter turnout, but we want everybody to vote who wants to vote. And when there's something going on outside of, on the outside that's impacting that, we want to address that and tell the truth and let people know, and then they can, decide, and hopefully they'll decide that they'll see that what we're saying is true.
All right, thanks. Appreciate that.
I know I didn't really answer your question. It's frustrating for us too. We're having the same conversations.
Well, and I didn't really ask a question in there either. I was just, looking for a little, potential guidance as to what we could possibly tell these people, like you're saying, that just will not listen to us. And they just believe the MDM.
Right. And I would say also, this is the biggest time for you guys to absolutely support your county clerks. We really need the county commissioners supporting us. And so when you are getting those questions, if you can, start asking, have you spoken to the clerk? Have you taken election tours? Have you gone in and actually seen the processes? I know I'm one of the clerks. I open up my election every single time for tours. I make Facebook videos of behind the scenes, what's going on, life of your ballot. And I think right now is just the biggest opportunity for the clerks and the county commissioners, since, we're being dumped into the same email chains, for you to support your clerks as much as possible with being on the same page and see what is your clerk saying, and then amplifying that as much as possible.
Yep. The two of us have certainly recognized the hard work that the commissioner puts in, that the clerk puts in for Park County. And,
that's awesome.
we do it frequently at our meetings because these people continue to come in and, basically pound us all the time, like I was saying. So
it's difficult too, because, there are members of the legislature that believe this. And there's one who has refused multiple overtures from their clerk to come in and tour the office, take a look at the system, get your hands on, take a look at it. And the legislator refuses to do it. And what can you do in that case other than highlight that legislature has refused to come in and take a tour? And it's hard. It's hard to push back on it.
Thanks, Ray. Other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any hands raised. If I'm missing you, sing out. Or you can also put them in the questions into the chat. In the meantime, Cody, thanks for your question. As I said in the chat, we will be sharing both the PowerPoint presentation from today, as well as a recording of this session on our newsletter next week, and it'll be on our YouTube channel, along with some of my newest TikTok dance moves that everyone can also take advantage of. Other questions or comments while we have our clerks with us today? Okay, Carly or Bo, do you have anything in closing to impart to us before we let you go for the weekend?
I would just say, be kind to your clerk. We are a team as elected officials for the county, and we're all representing the same constituents. So it's important that we have commissioners as allies when these things do come up, so that we have people standing behind us who believe in the system and believe in governance. And so, you know, just look out for your clerk, do what you can for them. I know that budgets are tight, but we really are trying to do the best for our community and best for voters.
And to echo that, I do greatly appreciate you guys taking your time and allowing us to come speak to you and give you some more information. Again, you know, I'm always available to any of my fellow electeds here in Will County. I know every single clerk can say that as well. You know, again, we are the trusted source of information. A lot of us have been doing this for a lot of years. And if one of us doesn't know the answer, I'm sure, you know, another clerk would have the answer to help out. And greatly appreciate your time and appreciate it. And again, if you have any other questions after you kind of review it, you all have our contact information. Call your clerk and say, hey, I wasn't too clear on this and I reviewed it and I'm still not clear. Definitely have those personal conversations with your clerk, because one thing about it is we are controlling and we have the laws of the land, but we do have some unique things that each county does do. And so it is also important for you to understand that there are going to be a little bit of differences between each county. And that's why it's so important for you all to have such a great relationship with your clerks, which I'm sure you all do. I'm very fortunate and blessed here in Will County that I do. And again, if they have tours, encourage you to go take that, encourage these other people to take those tours and to just get as much of the correct and trusted information out there. And again, thank you for your time and greatly appreciate the invite.
Great. Thank you so much, Carly and Bo. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, I want to thank our speakers today. I want to thank Matt and Carly and Bo, and also to Mike Beasley, my good friend, for helping me set this up today. Again, we're making this available on our newsletter next week, a link to the recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation you saw today. I do thank you all for being here. I wish you all safe travels and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.